The Federal High Court in Abuja yesterday dismissed a suit by the People's Democratic Party (PDP) seeking the removal of Governor Ben Ayade of Cross River State for defecting to the All Progressives Congress (APC). Delivering his judgment on the suit, the judge Taiwo held that a governor cannot be sacked on account of defecting from the political party on whose platform he was elected to another. The judge based his decision on the judgment of the Court of Appeal in Enugu, which dismissed an appeal filed against the Ebonyi State Governor David Umahi on account of his defection from the PDP to the APC. Questions begging for answers include: what are the lessons politicians must learn from this judgment? Is defection or are defections really good for Nigerian politics? Is there any lacuna in the law that lawmakers must look into subsequently? And what must stakeholders do going forward? Well, our guests on today's episode of Nigeria Today shall be providing answers to these and other questions as we discuss the Federal High Court ruling on Ayade's defection. I am Lydia Ochi. Thank you for joining us. Joining me in the studio is a senior advocate of Nigeria, Mazi Afam Osigwe. Welcome to Nigeria Today.
Thanks for having me.
Also joining us via Zoom is a legal practitioner and public affairs analyst, Aliyu Abdullahi. Thank you for joining us. Okay, now let me go to Mazi. How would you describe the High Court ruling on Umahi and Ayade's defection, and what does it really mean for the Nigerian democracy?
Well, I would simply start by saying that the whole issue is a total waste of everybody's time. The decision by the Federal High Court is sound. And I thought that with the decision of the Supreme Court in the case of AG Federation and Atiku Abubakar, decided about 2007 that this issue ought to have been rested. That we needn't waste so much judicial time litigating this issue all over again 15 years after. Because the Supreme Court was very emphatic in that situation. And it was unfortunate that in order to model the argument in recent times, people have been arguing, votes cast for a political party in an election belong to a political party. That has no business to do with this matter. And the issue is very simple. Is there a constitutional disability for a member of the executive, deputy governor, president or vice president who defects from the political party on which platform they were elected to another political party? That's a very narrow issue. Okay. And if there is no constitutional provision disqualifying them as applies to the legislature, then we shouldn't waste precious judicial time litigating this issue. If the Supreme Court has settled the matter, it ought to stay there. Whatever people may feel about the fact that a governor and his deputy defect should not be a reason why we should keep going back to trouble the judges that are already overworked, that barely have enough time to do so much other work, begging for urgent attention to decide these cases. The decisions are there to guide us, and we shouldn't waste time going back to the court on these issues. The issues are settled. There's no provision in the Constitution, and all those who have been litigating it could not point to any provision of the Constitution that says that, unlike the provision in section 68 of the Constitution that says if a member of the legislature defects to another political party, that person loses his or her position, except where the party is in process of being dissolved or is factionalized. In the absence of that, there ought not to be time wasted on this issue, taking up so much argument in public space, discussing it, making judges write conflicting judgments about it, reducing it to the issue of Electoral Act. The Electoral Act has nothing to do with the matter. An Electoral Act deals with pre-election issues and post-election issues. When a person's election has been challenged and the matter is rested, then the provisions of the Electoral Act cease to apply to that person and ought not to have come into place in the first place. So the judgment by Justice Taiwo of the Federal High Court, which followed the decision of the Court of Appeal, Enugu division in Senator Obu, I've forgotten his name, and David Umahi, is sound in law, as he merely restated the position of the Supreme Court as stated in the case of Atiku that I earlier on referred to.
Okay. Now, could you give us a brief on the court ruling and the lessons politicians must learn on the Federal High Court position on Ayade's defection?
Well, the court simply said that the fact that the governor defected from the PDP to the APC is not enough grounds, is not a ground for a court declaring his seat vacant. It's very simple. And if we recall, in the case of AG Federation and Atiku, I think it was Justice Akinto who even went further to say that it is not the business of the court to delve into such a matter. And yet to have this decision, and so many cases are coming up and different decisions being reached. And I say, I blame the practitioners, I blame legal practitioners who are involved in these matters, I blame the politicians. If the law is settled, if an apex court of a land, like the Supreme Court, has decided a matter, we need not waste our time going back to court. We need not heat up the polity. We need not having a court order or vacate your seat, swear in the next person, creating more confusion in the process. If a matter is settled, it is settled. It is supposed to say judicial precedent, and the lower courts are supposed to be bound by the decisions. And so Justice Taiwo, I reiterate again, was on firm legal grounds in dismissing the suit and refusing the prayers sought in the matter, because the Supreme Court has decided that matter. And the Court of Appeal in Enugu incidentally still followed the same decision by the Supreme Court. 15 years after a settled matter, we are making it look as if it's a novel issue, as if there is no case law to guide us in it. And so much argument. We may have different arguments or feelings about it on moral grounds, that if a party has elected it, it ought not to leave. We may think it's immoral. But that's as far as it goes. It may be immoral, but not unconstitutional. And if it's not unconstitutional, there's no legal bar disqualification, then we should move on. In the next election, if the person presents himself or herself, then you may remember that he has left the political party on whose platform he or she was elected to go to another, and you decide to vote for him or against him based on how you are moved by that act of defection. But you shouldn't take up judicial time. There's so much to be done.
So much to be done, actually. Now, let me go to Aliyu Abdullahi, if you can hear me loud and clear. Now, tell us, in your own opinion, are these defections, are they good for our politics? And what other ways or best ways can party members resolve their differences instead of defections?
Well, if the defection, if we are asking whether they are good for the development of in general, there are two ways to look at it. One, there is the fact that it can be seen, where a political party denies the opportunities of a level playing field in terms of lack of internal democracy. Someone could have an access to another party. But if a winning political party, it is not that good or a development for a party that worked hard and then garnered all the support and the votes, then for them to lose a seat to another party who actually came second or who lost at the election. So from that perspective, it is not good. But the best, what are some of the best ways? I think some of the best way, actually, and what does this signify? It signifies the lack of political ideology among our political parties, especially the major political parties. There is no one principle or ideology that you can say a particular political party is identified with or is known with, unlike what is obtainable from places where we copied this kind of system of government, like the United States, for example. In the United States, we have two major political parties, like the GOP, that's the Republican Party, and the Democrats. Each one, they have some non-deep-rooted ideologies that you align yourself just because you know where they stand on issues that concerns their values as people, issues that concerns even your culture as a particular people. I don't want to go to those things, but here in Nigeria, political parties are mere vehicles. In fact, they are not only permanent vehicles, but a special purpose vehicle to get to a particular goal, to win election. And then from there, people just do what they want to do. So I will conclude by saying that I think there is a greater harm in allowing defections, even among the executive arm, than actually caging the issue of defection. And one of the ways that the country can actually solve this issue is by introducing a law that will address, just like we have on the legislative houses, or also allowing an independency candidates within our political system, so that if your reason for defection, for example, it's because you are facing some lack of internal democracy within your political party and you wishes to continue to realize your own political ambition, you can actually have the alternative of running as an independent candidate if you are that popular. And because the arguments from some of these defectors are mostly because they are being muzzled out of the political parties they belong to or where they won elections. Some is purely because they want to really maybe aspire to a more political office, or they want to align with the center. So there are many ways to look at it, actually.
Mazi, how would you react to that? To his
Well, it will appear that my friend is unable to take a definite stand on the issue. Now, Section 40 of the Constitution guarantees right to freedom of association. And bury any constitutional disability imposed on an elected public official from changing his political party, I see nothing wrong in it. Now, so many reasons. It may appear politically immoral to some people, but then again, in the exercise of a right, the person may be the best judge of why he or she is defecting. So you may, like, I agree with him to the extent that he said that the political parties in Nigeria are not known for any ideological leaning. They are mere vehicles on which people go acquire power. And so most of the defections are not driven by ideology. They are driven by raw quest for power, moving to a more disadvantageous position. So people do not really, or sometimes when people lose out in a power play in a party, they lose the party structure in their state, or they lose out in a primary and they move to another party to be able to get a ticket. So it's just a power play. Now, so many things need to be addressed. And I do not think that passing any law to prevent people from changing political party will be the best. If I belong to a political party, for example, and I believe in free market operations and the party stands for that, and suddenly the party moves away from that, and I feel that ideologically I can no longer belong to that political party, it will be very wrong to insist that I stay there or that I lose my office because I no longer share their current views. I should be able to move. The important thing is for the voters to decide how they treat me for changing political party. Now, if our politicians will change party, not simply because a governor has changed party and he forces the members of the House of Assembly to move with him, and then if the deputy refuses to move with him, get him impeached, then maybe we'll have a Senate democracy. In 2006, Atiku Abubakar left PDP for, I think, Action Congress. And Obasanjo sought to do everything to get him out, and the court stopped him. Now, if we have a situation where the law works, and then you may find it difficult for two persons elected on the same ticket for one to defect, or for both of them to defect, and people keep changing party. And if you look at the nature of our political parties, they have what I call an incestuous relationship. So somebody derisively said after the APC convention that the transfer season has closed, that most of the leaders of APC were formerly of the PDP, and most of the leaders of PDP were formerly of the APC. So people keep switching position as it suits them. Not because of any ideological divide, but where the power play gives them an upper hand.
Okay.
So to what extent do the people benefit from it? I think should be the question, not whether people defect. To what extent do this defection deepen democracy, deepen the issues presented for public discourse, and deepen the expectations of people from government and what they actually do for the people? Those, to me, should be the real questions to be asking, not whether it will be wrong for a person to defect or not. Consider it immoral if you may, but legally, for a member of the executive, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Okay, Mazi, thank you for that. Now, let's take a break. We'll be back to talk some more. Don't go away.
This is NTA News 24 broadcasting from Abuja. You can watch us anywhere, anytime on the following platforms.
Start Times Channel 101, Free TV Channel 703, GSTV Channel 419, and Go TV Channel 46.
For more information, log on to our website www.nta.ng or join us on our social media handles, Facebook at NTA News 24.
For comments, suggestions and inquiries, send an email to news24@nta.gov.ng or call us on the following numbers.
NTA News 24.
News and more news.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. It's still Nigeria Today and we are discussing the Federal High Court ruling on Ayade's defection, and our guests are still with us. Let me go back to Aliyu. As a lawyer, what would you say is the position of law on defections, and what should be the ideal situation, that is, in your opinion? What should be? We seem to be having connection issues with Aliyu. Is he still there? Okay.
Of law on defection. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
The position of law on defection is really very clear in the Constitution. For the legislative houses, that's lawmakers, it's really clear that when you defect, you stand to lose your seat, unless you show a division within the political party in which you are defecting, where we won your election from. And that division must be a division that affects the structure of that party from the national. So a division in your state, in your local government or your ward would not actually satisfy the requirement which you will keep your seat. But when it comes to the executive arm of the government, from the president, vice president, governor, deputy governor, there is no law on defection, on officers or elected officers from the executive arm losing their seats. And this is because, like the latest son in the studio actually mentioned, the case between Chief Obasanjo and Atiku Abubakar has actually settled that a governor or a president or their deputies can actually only be removed once they have taken the oath of office. Through their ways they can be removed, either by resignation, by death, by reason of incapacitation, or by impeachment. And the Constitution spells out the processes and procedures that these officers can be removed. You cannot come and say you are challenging the defection of Governor A because he won the election on the platform of political party P, and the votes therefore belongs to the political party P. It doesn't work like that. The moment a governor wins an election and got sworn in, he has the mandate of the entire state, not only the mandate of the people that voted him into power. So that is why you cannot use that issue of the votes are actually the exclusive preserve of a political party to canvass or petition for the removal of that governor or that elected officer or holder of office. And again, finally, before I move from this angle, let us also notice one thing. The Constitution has also said, in trying to actually correct the decision in Celestine Omeha versus Amechi, that a candidate that will be declared a victor in any election or that will actually be sworn in is a candidate of a political party that has undergone through the entire gamut process of an election. So if you now take the seats of, let's say, Governor Ayade, and he wants to give it to a political party, his former political party, Who are you going to give it to? Did that person run the general election? Did he satisfy these constitutional requirements in that amendment? So these are the questions, and that is my position.
Okay.
But I understand the National Assembly are in the process of actually passing an amendment that will cover also the defection within the executive arm.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, Mazi, let me come to you. Is there anything you would want stakeholders to do going forward that could protect the party so that governors will not always defect to another party after being elected?
It's a bit difficult for me to say. I do not think, and I alluded to that earlier, I do not think it makes any good sense to pass a law stopping a member of the executive to defect. And I think the provision with respect to the legislature has its origin in the First Republic, where members of a certain political parties cross-carpeted in order to make another political party lose majority. And that was during the parliamentary system of government. And if you ask me, there's actually maybe not much basis to continue retain that provision in the Constitution. People should be able to move. If your political party is oppressive, does not represent your views, not democratic, is not being run in a way that represents your aspirations as an individual, you should be able to disagree with that political party. And if to the extent of that disagreement lasts, you no longer feel comfortable staying in that party, you should be able to leave. That's my honest view. And asking stakeholders to curtail that means that even when an environment has become oppressive or a political party no longer represents your view about governance, then you're compelled to stay there. I'm unable to agree with that view.
Okay.
I'm unable to agree with that view. Yet it may be abused in Nigeria, where maybe people may want to go to the party at the center, may put pressure on people for certain reasons, people are forced to. Those are the underlying issues we should deal with, so that we must have a democratic setting where nobody will be pressured to change the political party, either to avoid some disability or prosecution or some other denial of any benefit. But beyond that, the right of freedom of association is guaranteed by the Constitution. I respect that. And if indeed it results in people defecting from their political parties, so be it. It is for the electorate and some other political stakeholders to decide on how best to deal with it, mainly the electorate, but surely not by losing their seats.
Okay. Now, Aliyu, let me ask you one final question. In a few words, tell us, someone once said the best way to remove bad leaders out of office is for members of their constituency to recall them even after electing them. Could you explain how recalling elected leaders can work in Nigeria? Could you explain how recalling elected leaders can work in Nigeria?
Well, okay, interesting question. Interesting question, actually, because the only way, the two ways that you can call elected leaders, if you're talking about the executive arm of the government, for example, you have to wait until the next cycle of the election to do that recall by not voting for that person if that person is going for a second term, or by not voting for a platform which he is clearly standing or identifying with. The second one has to do with the legislative houses. Again, that's a different ballgame. The constituents can actually recall a legislative or a representative. There are clear procedures laid down in the Constitution where signatures of these people can, the members of constituents can be obtained, you know, the percentage that is needed, depending on how many local governments, how many wards, or and the people who voted in the previous election. Then even that is a really cumbersome procedure, because in the history, I think, of the country, it has only been successful in a number of big cases. I think one or twice. That is it. The other way for the executive is also the impeachment process, and this is also another tactical recall by the people, because it's assumed the members of the legislative house, the representatives, are the people, they are doing the people's wishes. So they can also invoke the constitutional impeachment process, but that cannot be done unless someone has actually has done a gross violation, has misconduct, and that gross misconduct is also defined in the Constitution. What gross violation means, like, for example, violating some of the provisions of the ground on the Constitution. This is what will set or kick in the impeachment process of an executive officer. Besides that, I don't know how people can record an executive elected official like a governor instead, unless wait for another round, another cycle of an election.
Thank you for your response there. We wish we had more time to talk more on this issue, but we don't have more time. This is where we say goodbye on this episode of the program, and our discussion has been on the Federal High Court ruling on Ayade's defection. And with me had been a senior advocate of Nigeria, Mazi Afam Osigwe, and we thank you for coming.
Thank you so very much for having me.
We also had a legal practitioner and public affairs analyst, Aliyu Abdullahi. Thank you for your time and insights on the program. Thank you. And to our viewers, thank you for always being a part of the program. Remember, you can still watch this episode and other ones on www.youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hub. All right, till I see you next week, I am Lydia Ochi. Have a wonderful weekend. Goodbye.